It's not really possible to understand what's happening in education if one doesn't understand some of the things that have contributed to the shape that is going there. And I suppose there are really two things that come through. For the vast majority of people, up until not very long ago, 2-3 generations back, schooling stopped at about the age of 12, and they went straight into what we now call as apprenticeships. Now those apprenticeships were a continuation of learning, but it was learning on the job. And it's interesting that the role of teacher sort of stopped, the separate teacher stopped at the age of, child's age of 12, but every adult accepted a responsibility to share their ideas. Now that was going on for the majority of people. The minority of people came through a much more academic approach, which goes way back into European history, which was all about training the next generation of lawyers and clerics. And they needed to be able to read, argue, articulate, orate, all the technical things that we understand now with universities. And perhaps in Europe, about 5%, 10% of the population went to things which even now we'd recognize as schools. In fact, there's a syllabus even now in existence which dates back to something that was set out in Rome in the 2nd century. And it set out what the balance of subjects should be like. And it's pretty similar to what you would call advanced placement in Canada at the moment. Now that tradition grew up as a taught tradition. And so gradually you had these sort of two ways of doing it, the practical way and the theoretical way. Now, at the beginning of this century, or the 1930s really, with the Great Depression, people suddenly thought, God, we better if we get the children, if we get the young people out of the workplace, there will be more jobs for the adults. And so very, very rapidly people said, well, let's put everybody between the age of 12 and 18 into school. What do you do with them in school? Well, the only thing they knew about schools was the academic tradition from Western Europe. And so they turned to everybody, including those youngsters who are much more gifted with their hands, who want to actually do things, and said, sit still and we will teach you. And this tradition of teach, teach, teach actually has sort of grown and grown and grown. It has one pernicious advantage as far as administrators are concerned. You can test children as to how much of that they have remembered. And that has come to dominate the whole thing. Education is about remembering. It's not. Education is about doing. And schools can't do that very well.